Welcome to Transforming the Trades, the podcast where we empower you to take charge and innovate your business. Whether you're a plumber, electrician, or any other trade professional, this show is designed to give you the tools and strategies you need to succeed. Sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready to take your business to the next level with Transforming the Trades. Hey, Mike. Thanks for joining today. I appreciate it very much. Welcome. And I'd like to kick this off and have you introduce yourself. Who's your company? What's your company's mission and purpose? And then we're going to talk about how your programs and methods may lend to this whole idea of not where we've been, but where we're going as business owners, especially in the trades. So Mike's yours. There you go.
It is awesome to see you. And thanks for having me on. I am Mike Simmons, just about 50 years old. So I've got a little bit of background that's pretty diverse. My background is in ops. I used to work at UPS, so operations. I got into customer success, is what they call it today, with a company in the learning technology space. We're helping companies implement our technology inside their organization. So you start to really empathize with business leaders who are making decisions around transformation inside their business and how do you leverage technology to do that. Then got into the sales space, executive leadership positions, and about 7.5 years ago, I launched a company called Catalyst A.C.T.S. We've recently rebranded to Catalyst A.C.T.S. Nothing happens without action, and some people get turned off by the word sale. So I wanted to open it up to a broader audience who maybe have these preconceived notions around what sales is, and then allow that to get in the way of them making a transformation on their end when they start to think about how can I apply sales process frameworks, techniques, tools to help me get better at things like problem solving, decision making, goal setting and execution, and effective communication. And that's where where I focus my attention on right now, doing this both with individuals inside organizations, because everything starts at the individual, and then groups of individuals as far as teams, and then teams of teams inside organizations. What drives me is helping people do the things they want to do better, faster.
Regardless if it's in business or personal, right? Actually, you can't decouple it. It actually is, it's connected.
You cannot decouple it. It's how we do. If you start to decouple it, you lose integrity.
Tell me what that means.
Well, so, think about integrity. What's it? So integrity is, integrity in a structure. What's the integrity in a structure? Well, do we have the right things, doing the right things at the right time in the right place? Have we used the right equipment? I'm a builder of technology historically. I'm not a builder of physical things. I put together, swing sets and those kind of things. If we use the right parts in the right places, we have structural integrity. The same thing happens when our thoughts, our beliefs, and our actions are aligned. When we create misalignment, we reduce integrity and we create risk in the way that we go to market, in the way that we interact with customers, in the way that we interact with other humans. In other words, don't try to be something you're not. If you try to be something you're not, you're going to have misalignment. You'll lack integrity. You create risk.
Got it. Well, when I originally spoke with you, that you understand that where a lot of my community lives is in the plumbing, heating, electrical, garage door, different service trades. And I'll call it a legacy industry. It's been around for many years. It's done a lot of the same things for many years the same way. And what we're seeing is that we have a big shift in demographic, i.e. the consumer. So the consumer is, of course, becoming more and more agile, meaning that they want to do things on their own terms with their own devices, meaning mobile app, computer. They're not too interested in being stuck to any particular thing. I guess my question would be, have you ever hired a plumbing company or an HVAC company to do work at your home?
All the time. I joke about it. If Andrew had a real dad, I wouldn't need to hire out some of these other things. There are things that I'm really good at. That's not one of them. And what's cool about the experience that you have when you bring people in to do plumbing, whether it's inside your house or irrigation outside of your house, or they come in to do stonework inside the house or outside of the house. They come in to paint. They come in to take care of your air conditioning. Many times, especially with air conditioning out here in Arizona, you're dealing with a situation where it's critical that the thing gets fixed. There's a high level of intensity. You're in a high emotional state. You're sweating. You
Right.
don't want your family to feel uncomfortable. You need to get a problem fixed. So we're really emotional as customers. We, as service providers, can meet them as humans on the other side and create an amazing interaction, amazing experience for them. And it doesn't take a lot. It really takes getting back to your core, being a human being in the way that you interact with people, interact with them the same way that you would like others to interact with you. And it's amazing what happens. So no matter what the technology is in place, a lot of people want to be able to buy things on a website, not have to deal with a salesperson. They don't want to deal with a human until they need to deal with a human. When someone is in your house taking care of your ejector pump for a really crappy situation that you have going on down your basement, they want to know that they're working with a human being who cares about getting this thing fixed quickly so that life can get back to normal. So yes, I outsource all of that kind of stuff. The only
Hmm.
mechanical stuff I do is really like I'll wrench on the Jeep every once in a while, but other than that, that's not me.
So, what you're speaking to is where I believe one of the key pivot points are in this, well, I would argue any industry, but certainly something that is becoming more relevant in our industries is that where do you engage? How do you engage? And more importantly, how do you satisfy that customer's experience with a positive outcome, even if you can't do the work? I mean, sometimes that is a reality. They can't perform the work for lack of a better word. And you're familiar, obviously, with the change in the demographic from, I'll call it us good old baby boomers who pick up the phone every time something happens, right? To those who want to just do it by text on the mobile phone,
Right.
right? So, what I would like to do is keep this industry community that I'm in aware that the consumer is so important in your business, and being aware of how they want to and will interact with you and what it's going to take to heighten that satisfaction is going to be, I believe, more critical than ever, because our industry, even though, a company could be plumbing, heating, electrical, or whatever, the only thing that really makes it different usually is the experience. That's it. Because we all basically sell the same manufacturer equipment, offer the same services. Our skill set certainly is basically the same. We train and certify in the same programs. So, what is your perspective on this industry as well as other industries of how they create that heightened awareness? And even if it's not part of who they are today, because they may not be thinking so much that way, how do they start to look at this from a customer's experience versus a internal focus operations, right? I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. What are you all talking about to the business owners out there?
Yeah, you can design for customer experience. You can
Correct.
design for positive outcomes. And from a design thinking perspective, and there's a really good book out there. If anybody is interested, if you're interested in reading, you want to read something where you would say, I have no idea how this would apply to my business. And then once you read it, you're like, wow, I see how this applies to everything I do in my business. Read the book, The Design of Everyday Things. It's got a yellow cover. It has a teapot, a tea kettle on the front, and the handle of the tea kettle is on the same side as the spout. And if you ever tried to pour water out of a tea kettle, you know that that's not a very good design. We see this every day in the facilities that we go into. How many times have you gone up to a door thinking you need to push the door in, and the reality is you need to pull it out? Now, from a design standpoint, if they would have just put a handle on the door, it would have been clear that you pull it out, and a bar is clear that you push in. We know these things, we see them. We can design with intention. You can do the same thing when you're working with your customers. So if the positive experience is the end result, the objective is that you want someone to give you tens on all of their ratings. Okay, well, what typically happens before someone gives a 10? What typically happens before that? What typically happens before that? And just work backward, design backward, and then start executing and testing forward. Let's say, and my business is built purely on referrals. We were introduced to each other through a referral.
Right. That's right.
So my business has been built on referrals because I design for an amazing customer experience so that when people come across others who run into the challenges that I can help people solve for, they say, I know a guy. I got a guy. Just like we got a guy who takes care of plumbing, HVAC, electrical. When my water heater goes, I know who to call.
Hmm.
I know who to ask inside the neighborhood, the group text, where we say, hey, does anybody have a plumber? Does anybody have an electrician? Be that person on the other end. And you can design for the experience that you want to create for your customers. One of the biggest shifts that I think anybody can make when designing for customer experience is ask more questions, limit the assumptions that you make. Don't assume that the experience that someone wants is they want to save as much money as possible. They want to get the cheapest solution in place. I would much rather pay twice as much to get something taken care of if I know it's going to be fixed once and not have to be addressed again, than go into a situation where I've got to redo it a couple of years later. Personally, I have my calendar dates to replace the water heater. The reason I want to replace the water heater is not because I know it's going to go in a certain period of time, but it's because I don't want to be in a situation where I'd rather do the preventative thing to make sure that I've got a good water heater in there than have to deal with trying to get a hold of somebody to do drywall repair, put a new machine in. So think about your customers. What does that customer experience look like? Who are the customers that you replaced a water heater on 6 years ago? And what conversations are you having with them now about preventative maintenance? So those are just a couple of ways that we can go in and design for customer experience and create an amazing experience where you're recommendable, you're referable to others.
I love what you just said. Ask more questions and limit your assumptions,
Yes.
right? We all do that. We don't ask enough questions and we assume way too much. And that to me is one of those pivotal moments in business, right? Is when you start understanding that you have assumed the wrong thing and therefore you got the wrong outcome. Not intentional, but it's a bit how we're programmed, right? That to me is a pivot point when you start understanding not to be so internally focused, but rather be externally focused, ask more questions. And by the way, it could probably change the whole operations of your business.
Not only could, it will.
It will. Yeah.
It will. And think about as a leader inside your business, if you get frustrated when members of your team are asking questions, you're not creating a culture where you're reinforcing them asking questions out in the field. If you're not asking questions of your team, you're not reinforcing a culture of them asking questions in the field. So build this capability, reinforce this capability, both at the front line and at the top of the food chain
Leadership line.
inside the organization. Cover it
Hmm.
both from a leadership structure and a leading from the front line. Help your team get more comfortable in asking those questions. And a lot of times those questions are things like, what else are you worried about inside the house? What have you not thought about? Did you know that you should flush your water heater out every 6 months? It's different than when's the last time you,
And then the common question is, when was it last serviced?
yes. And when
Or
was it last
has
serviced?
it broke before? Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So, and
Mhm.
I know that I'm supposed to flush my water heater out every 6 months. I don't do it. The thing that I do change are the filters inside our refrigerator, the water filters inside the refrigerator, because water pressure starts to slow down. So I know that that's a trigger. Even though I've got dates listed to do this every 6 months, it typically ends up being, hey, the water pressure started to slow down. So think about those questions that experts would know to ask inside the environment when they're diagnosing a challenge, and empower your team to ask those questions of your customers. When you ask questions and your customers start answering and you listen to the response and ask a follow-up question in context, people will feel seen, heard, understood. They will feel engaged. They will feel like they're valued, and they won't feel like you're talking down to them. It's not about demonstrating expertise in the words we share. It's demonstrating expertise and commitment in the questions we ask.
Yeah, it's funny the way you explain your own tracking of your own home equipment, which by the way, you're amazing that not most homeowners do that, just so you know. really what we're selling is reliability and comfort.
Yeah.
And honestly, this whole concept of how we help them track is extremely important because the average consumer does not track. They don't track birthdays. How in the world are they going to track when the water heater's going to get flushed, right?
Right.
But you're bringing up some really fun, really cool fundamentals that a business could start to think about. How do you employ that into your approach with your consumer, your customer, your potential, your new leads, as well as your existing customers? I think one of the hesitancies has been in this industry is that most of the time when somebody calls these places of businesses or have contact, it's almost like it's a grudge purchase. It's broke.
Yeah.
So it's where do you become invasive versus helpful, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I think is the magic in how this is handled in an approach to a consumer. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one of the questions that comes to mind for me in this context, and I've used it in other contexts before, it's when do you need to have a plumber?
Great question. Versus
Well,
when you need versus
when
you
you would have wanted to have that
wanted to
plumber,
have a
right?
plumber, right?
So
It's a
Lynn,
very
when do you,
different.
yeah, when do you need to have a plumber? What's typically happening when you need to have a
Oh,
plumber?
a sewer's backing up, water line has broke, et cetera. No hot water. And so that is a need. I need that fixed. What what we typically, as this industry, we rely on that need
Right.
versus that want, right? A plumber could fall into a category of want. I want to remodel my bathroom.
Well,
I want to change my faucets and update them. Those kinds of things would be I want versus I need, right?
and
Mhm.
if you, well, take the need piece and let's go just a little bit further and ask that same question of the person who needed to have the plumber and say, when would you have wanted to have that plumber? Right
Yeah,
before the sewage backed up,
right.
right before the air conditioning, and this is HVAC, but like right before the air conditioning went out, right before the water main broke, right before. How
Mhm.
can you be the right before solution? How can you
Versus
guide your customers? How can you be there to demonstrate the importance of preventative maintenance? Because some people, the only reason I have those things listed is because I've dealt with a lot of crap. Like we've had that ejector pump go.
literally.
Literally, we've had that ejector pump go. We've had that ejector pump go. I mean, typically in Arizona, you don't have basements, so
Right,
basements are a
right,
little
right.
strange out here. We do have a basement. We've had that ejector pump go a couple of times. And when that thing gets backed up, you know what it's ejecting, you know what's
Yes,
backed up, you know what happens. It's just a really crappy situation. So the want piece and being out there for people, acting in service of others can really create an amazing experience for people that are out there. And people don't know because they get so lost in the day to day, the
that's
things that
right.
they're working on. We're just going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And, you know, if you're in a neighborhood and it happens to be, there was new home construction that happened 7 years ago and one water heater went,
Yeah.
there's a
All the
high
rest of them are gonna go.
likelihood
Yeah, the
that
rest of them are
everybody
gonna
else
go.
is going to go. Like it's funny
Right.
to see the patterns. Like the one that scares me is when I drive around the neighborhood and I see air conditioning HVAC companies out because I'm like, "Oh, please give me another year, give me another year, give me another year."
Right, right. So let me ask you, so Catalyst
Yeah.
Act, it's a program, it's a method. How does an operator or a business owner engage with your company? And do you have a particular program that would be designed to start thinking like this? What is the because typically when we're talking to coaches and consultants in this industry, it's someone who's in this industry. And I find that helpful, but I also know that there's so much more out there that we may not be addressing and we may not be necessarily listening to. And that was why I was so intrigued about having you on the podcast, is that you're not from this industry.
Yeah.
However, you're very comfortable and in tune with business operations and leadership and this whole space of consumer. And so to me, this is information for any industry. It doesn't matter what industry it is, right?
Well, And it's an industry that I'm very interested in getting involved in. And
Awesome.
the arc for me is, in order to see work that I've been involved in, you have to either open up a computer or look at a phone. There are too many reasons to open up a computer and look at a phone. We don't need another reason for people to
Another
open a
reason.
computer and look at a phone. So what happens if you actually apply a lot of the same concepts and thinking into verticals where we actually can see the work when we drive down the street? We see what a community looks like when everybody has a fresh coat of paint on the houses. We see what a community looks like when people put care and attention into landscaping. We see what a community looks like when people put care and attention into building bigger buildings. So I've made an active move into the construction space over the course, from a testing standpoint, over the course of the last probably about 8 months or so, and working with a client who's in the space, who delivers automotive, or is a manufacturer distributor for automotive lifts. So think of things that happen inside dealerships. So construction, so lifting cars or heavy duty trucks, getting lube from one place to another, getting air from another place to another. These are all systems. So we move water from a plumbing standpoint, we move air from um, a plumbing standpoint, just different type of plumbing.
Right.
We put lifts in pre-construction, post-construction. We have to replace those things. And what I'm finding is, at a fundamental level, there are some basics that apply, because, and I think the common denominator is, we're all working with human beings who have different wants and needs that they're working on. So the best place to find me is at findmycatalyst.com. That's where I send everybody, findmycatalyst.com. And the entry point is around achieving results through strategy and tactics, which can start to feel a little bit overwhelming. If you're struggling with achieving results, the answer may not be doing more tactical stuff, like more work. It may actually be revisiting the type of work that you're doing and figure out what you can eliminate, so that you can focus time, energy, and attention on the right work in the right order to get things done. And that's where the Catalyst game plan, goal setting and execution through clarity and focus, comes together. And that's the entry point in. Those systems work in building out your own operating system in business, and there's a number of them that are out there, EOS or MBOs or
Right.
OKRs, and they're all out there. They all structurally have the same broad pieces, which is, we've identified what our goals are. We have some strategy associated with how we're going to attack those goals. And then we have some metrics that we use to keep track of our, whether or not we're doing the work, or our performance relative to the work. So the best place to engage with me is at Find My Catalyst. The programs I focus on are simplifying goal setting and execution, simplifying problem solving and decision making, simplifying communication, and simplifying go to market. Because I think that we overcomplicate the crap out of this stuff, and we get ourselves caught in this trap of wanting to do more, doing more, looking for the next trick that's going to work, the thing that's going to fix things, the keyword research that we're going to do that's going to change the way that we engage. When the reality is, a lot of our business might come from referrals. Well, what are we doing to design for better referrals? There's a different way that we can change the way that we think about the work that we do. So, yep, a couple of different programs out there, and the best place to go is findmycatalyst.com.
So, Mike, here's my takeaway. And this, I think, is just sometimes common sense, but sometimes you just have to have somebody hit you right in the middle of the forehead. Is just because somebody else does it one way doesn't mean that it's necessarily the right way for you, right?
Right.
Take a step
100%.
back, go back to the strategy level, understand your purpose, your value, your thoughts around why you're in this thing called a business. Because what we see here is a lot of, well, somebody else did it, so I did it too. That's a real very common path in this industry.
Yeah.
And some have been successful doing that, but many more have not. So they're just small tactics that kind of inch you along. And you're saying, look at the big picture. My messages to my community is, think outside the box,
Yeah.
take a step back, reevaluate what your goals and what your strategy should be for your business, and start thinking about it more at that level.
I'd like to build on what you just shared there. So I'm a lifelong Jets fan.
Good for you.
New York Jets, not the one,
Yeah,
not the one, not the White Wings.
I know who you're talking about.
So, lifelong Jets fan. The Jets have never developed a quarterback internally. Taking someone's playbook that's focused on quarterback play that's been developed inside an organization with and applying it to the Jets doesn't work. If you're trying to apply somebody else's playbook into your business and hoping to get the results that you're aiming for, you're taking on much more risk than you need to. Unfortunately, there are a lot of companies and a lot of businesses that are out there who make money continuing to sell their programs to people doing to do the same thing.
Right.
Now, if you look across the industry and say everybody's growing because someone's figured out the secret sauce, the ingredients to get these things done, then maybe that is the right company to work with. But if you look across the industry and say that people are dealing with these same challenges over and over again, and they're hiring the same people to come in and do this work, then maybe the challenge is the playbook. If a company is generating their business based on the playbook they apply, and we see this in sales all the time, there are companies out there who sell sales training and they'll coach on sales process. Well, they
Mhm.
coach on sales process that has ambiguity in it, and then they have to support fixing it with training. That's part of their business development strategy. That doesn't help you. So I think your point there around changing the way that you think and the way that you approach things for your business is critical. The key piece is having a set of guiding principles, a set of frameworks, some processes that you can work through so that you're testing in a way where you can get feedback, continuous feedback. Like when you are doing electrical work, there's a feedback loop that happens immediately. The circuit is either closed or it is not closed. You're getting
Mhm.
power to the outlet or you're not. If you're not getting power, then you've got to go through the system and figure out where your break is. Same kind of thing happens inside your business.
I want my audience to also pay attention to some really key points. Like we said, ask more questions, less assumptions.
Yep.
That to me is so important. And what I would say just in general, our industry over the last probably, well, I'll call it 10 or 15 years, through the playbook method, has what I believe has become stable,
Mm.
more stable than it ever was before.
Yep.
But stability also is a challenge. It breeds complacency.
Yeah.
And so you can't be complacent either. So that's also the other takeaway that I would have.
There's a balance on that innovation piece and that creativity and where can we innovate and where can we learn and if we do the fundamentals really, really well over and over again, we can learn and be more creative in some of those other spaces. Thank you.
Create value. Absolutely.
So, Lynn, this has been an awesome conversation. So
Mike, it's been great having you on the show. I really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed it. It's refreshing.
thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in to Transforming the Trades. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and gained some valuable insights and tips for your trade business. If you found this podcast helpful, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to check out our website where you can find additional resources and information to help you grow your business. Until next time, keep innovating and take charge of your success.